Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Will and Luke Discuss,
a vodcast
and podcast
where we discuss content related to psychology,
personal growth,
self-development,
and well-being. This episode, we're discussing
Sleep by Nick Littlehales, who's a sleep... Oh, did I? How did I fuck it?
I'm joking. Nick Littlehales.
Yeah, that's it. Nick Littlehales. He's an elite sports sleep coach.
Elite sport and what?
An elite sports sleep coach.
There you go.
There we go.
Sorry, mate. I'm only jesting.
It's going to be hours till I find out what I actually said. Yeah, I thought this was a pretty interesting book, something a bit different than what we've covered up until now.
Isn't it?
Pretty easy to digest. I feel like it falls somewhat into the habits and routines and structuring your life. General
well-being and lifestyle.
Yeah, that I think we're going to be trying to get into over the next few podcasts. So it's a nice way to start. I think it's worth giving him a bit of an introduction about who he is. So he's he's worked with major soccer clubs and football. You're going to kill me. Cycling teams, multiple like one-on-one individual work with like CEOs, business managers, and all that sort of thing. And basically, his job is getting people to like work out their best sleep pattern and, I guess, maximize sleep as a form of rest and recovery to enhance performance. So he's worked with some really high-end people, and I suppose he's decided to write a book for the general public. And I suppose in the context of this being relatively new science that's being put forward and not a regularly talked about subject in the mainstream, especially in sports recovery.
Yeah, and it's a real practical book. He doesn't really dig into any studies or anything. It's just like, do this and you'll be all right.
Yeah, which is kind of good to a point, but then I suppose I'm left with a few questions that I suppose we can speak about.
Yeah, well, jump in with him. What's your question?
Well, I think I'll just give a quick introduction. So he basically in the book he talks about 7 key sleep recovery indicators, right. And those are looking at circadian rhythms, your sleep chronotype, sleeping in cycles, which is the main crux of what he talks about, which is his R90 program, so sleeping in 90-minute cycles, pre and post sleep routines, naps, and position and comfort, and your sleeping environment. So there's kind of 7 main areas he talks about in the book. And
right.
I suppose the first one to start off with, I think, would be circadian rhythms, which he explains as our inbuilt natural body clock. Back from when we were cave people back in the day, and we would naturally wake up when the sun rose, and we would wind down when the sun went at the end of the day. And he's basically saying, like, if we lived in a cave, we would naturally wake up at these times, and to go against that is unnatural.
Yeah, he writes a little sort of hypothetical, doesn't he, which he consistently refers to throughout the book, which is like, imagine you've kind of set up your campfire, you've done all your hunting and gathering for the day, your fire set up before sundown, you've had your meal, you're sort of lounging around with your fellow paleoliths, and like as the fire's burning out and the sun's setting, you're sort of slowly nodding off after your evening dance and sing song and chat, and then you sleep through, you wake up, you empty your bladder, you sort of slowly rise with the sun. And he's saying that this is like the ideal we should be sort of striving for,
the natural inbuilt way we should be living our lives. Just to jump ahead a second, like he's saying, people who are who prefer to stay up later and wake up later, referred to as PMers, and those who go to bed early and wake up early as AMers, as their sleep chronotype, are basically their circadian rhythm is either a little bit fast or a little bit slow. And there's kind of like a general time that we would normally be sleeping, but some people, their clock may be running faster or slower.
Yeah, so it's kind of different biological chronotypes, isn't it? but he's also saying that like we're still all human, so we still all like sleep when it's dark, and that's all everyone's natural circadian rhythm falls under that. And like your most extreme PMer to your most extreme AMer is only still going to be a couple of hours, right? Because he's saying
2 hours out of that. Yeah.
Think like, oh, I'm a night owl because I don't fall asleep till 4 a.m. And he's like, well, that's probably because you're kind of watching YouTube and scrolling on Instagram until that time, rather than just natural PMer.
Yeah, that's not like a natural thing to do. I think he does emphasize a lot the importance of light and dark. So in terms of when it's dark, that's when we produce melatonin, the sleep hormone, and when it's light, that's when melatonin should be dying off, and then the increased production of serotonin in the system. So he talks a lot about like in the mornings, get the lights on, get some natural light on you, and toward when you're going to bed, try and decrease light, in particular the blue light that comes on phones and technology. So that's what it goes into a bit with pre and post sleep routines. That's something I definitely did. I mean, like the day after I read the book, I just like opened up like my blind, turned on all the lights, went outside for a walk. I just like fully got into it.
He suggests that basically you should get outside as soon as possible after waking up. Like that's what's most natural and what's best for your body and for your cycle, your circadian rhythm.
And this all kind of falls into like naturally when your your blood sugar levels are higher, and when your blood pressure as well, and natural peaks and troughs of sleeping. Like most people would naturally be fast asleep between the hours of 2 and 4, which made me wonder, is that when like the most robberies happen? Like they got some scientific knowledge to them.
Probably.
If they didn't know that, then we've just told a lot of people what time to go. So yeah, I guess what's your moving on to like chronotypes? What's your chronotype? I think I know, but I'd like to hear what you think.
I think it's hard to tell because I don't know how much I've been disturbed by culture and stuff, but I think like I definitely love the mornings. I feel I would, in general, if I do sleep well when I'm up early, like that's when I'd get my best work done. That's when I'd be most creative, when I'd have the most energy. So I'm probably towards the AMer side of things.
Are you tired at night time before you go?
Yeah.
Like, is that?
Yeah, but I still have that temptation, to stay up later than my body's telling me to. What was I saying? Yeah, when I first, like you kind of get inspired, don't you, when you read some of this stuff, and it's like, okay, see, he's like, one of the only kind of hard and fast rules he has is set a wake time and stick to it. Like anything else can sort of change, but like your wake time should always be the same. So like I kind of I set mine for 6 when I started reading the book. Probably did it for a couple of weeks, and then just got really tired and just started turning off the alarm. Like, but I do aspire to that still. But I found it kind of difficult to stick to initially, and I think I should give it another crack maybe.
But what he says is even do that on weekends as well, which is quite difficult. But what he says is like, even if you just like get up, go get some light on you naturally, and then go back to bed later, that's still something you can do. And I guess this is where I start to get a bit like stuck on his program sometimes, because I'm wanting to move on to the R90 program that he talks about, and how we sleep in 90-minute cycles. So we go through 4 different stages of sleep. So the first one being like drifting off, which is NREM, and then the second one is light sleep, and then the 2 other parts. So there's deep sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. It says we spend most of our like the most like productive rest happens in those last 2 phases. And what I had to do a bit of extra research on this, but basically he's saying that you want to wake up at the beginning of a 90-minute sleep cycle. So you're better off waking up in the dozing off, light sleep stage, and we will do that throughout the night without necessarily realizing it.
Yeah.
But if we wake up in the middle of REM sleep or in the middle of deep sleep, we often wake up feeling pretty groggy.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing. Now, I've got a couple of opinions on that, but
what are they?
yeah, I wonder. Just in regards to him saying, like, okay, you need to sleep in 90-minute cycles. So that either means, so for us, let's say we're getting up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
That either means we go to bed at 9 o'clock or 10:30.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, like, if you miss the 9 o'clock window to sleep,
yeah,
wait to the 10:30 one.
Yeah.
And I guess just like in my head, I'm like, well, if I'm tired and I go to bed at 9:30, like surely I've just got like an extra hour's sleep, and no matter how groggy I feel, potentially waking up in the middle of a cycle.
Yeah.
And also like the research I looked into as well. I mean, that he's obviously researched this a lot, and I should, maybe listen more. But then people's like length of sleep cycles can vary as well. The length of time you're in an REM sleep. So what if I'm going to miss 9 o'clock and end up going to sleep at 9:15? Do I just stay up till 10:30 and be tired?
Yeah,
get hours less sleep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because each cycle, your REM lessens, doesn't it? Because your REM is when you're dreaming, and that actually takes the most energy. Like REM sleep takes up more energy than being awake. So like, but cycle after cycle, it shortens the amount of time you're in that for. So I guess like that's why it's good to have quite a few 90-minute cycles. So by the end of your sleep, you're hopefully getting quite a lot of that deep sleep, which is the actual restorative feeling awake when you get up kind of sleep.
So what he's saying is we need at least 5 of those rounds, which is 7.5 hours sleep. So he says like the 8 hours is a bit of a myth.
He encourages you not to see it as nightly, but as cycles per week. So to see like 35 cycles a week.
Yeah. And if you have a bad cycle one night. Yeah, if you have a bad cycle one night, you can make it up the next day or even during the daytime.
Yeah.
I guess we'll get onto that a bit later. But have you tried doing like 90-minute cycles and sleeping in that way, or just sticking to the
I did. So I guess you still go to bed a bit earlier than, because the idea is that you fall asleep at that time.
Yeah,
so
true,
maybe you go to bed, I don't know, 15 minutes or so before you want to be asleep, just so you get that time to fall asleep. But I see what you mean. Like if you're tired and it's 10, like why wait? Like
so 10.
And I guess, like you say, it's not necessarily the case that everyone's cycle is going to be 90 minutes long. Like some people might have slightly shorter or longer cycles than others, and each individual cycle, I assume, could vary depending on things.
And also how you feel waking up in the middle of an REM cycle. Like if you've got a good morning routine, maybe you can kind of shake it off and it's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Oh, mate. When he was talking about that, I had this memory of us in Spain, and like, I think you woke me up to go to like this morning market. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
You tapped me on the chest, and I've never felt so bad from being woken up in my life. Like I must have been in such a deep sleep. And I think you like, I don't know, from the way I felt so shocked in waking, you must have hit me pretty hard.
I think I was just tapping you on the chest. So I don't know. I mean, saying I hit you is a bit of a stretch. But yeah, you must have been right in that deep sleep. Yeah. He talks about being able to make up those any lost hours in the daytime as well. And there's like peak times to take naps during the day.
So he encourages you not just to see sleep in 90 minutes, but basically to see a whole day in chunks of 90 minutes. And your life, like your life is in 90-minute chunks, and hopefully, what is it? 5 of them should be sleeping per day, and then you have these windows between like 12 and 2 in the afternoon, and then 5 and 7 in the evening to get these extra I can't remember why they're windows, something to do with your hormones and your circadian rhythm, but there are these 2 windows in the day to get your extra sleep in. So you might be able to get like an extra cycle in the middle of the day, which presumably is what the Spanish do.
Yeah. He says you can do that for like half an hour, but he says even if you can't nap, even if you're at work and things, like just physically taking a break, whether it's just kind of stepping away from your desk or going to grab water, or just like breaking up your day into 90-minute cycles. It's really
on that point, like, so whilst I remember it, that's probably the best thing I got from this book is so if I like woke up in the night or I couldn't get to sleep, I used to have that real stereotypical pattern he referenced in the book, which is like, you're like calculating the hours you're going to have left. If you do fall asleep, you're getting anxious about how you'll feel the next day if you don't fall asleep soon. And like, obviously your stress hormones start kicking in and it stops you going to sleep and you're thinking.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
And so I used to get that quite a bit. And he basically gave you permission to be like, resting is still okay. Like you don't have to fall asleep to get some of the goodness from the sleep. So it's almost like if you meditate, it's like you might need less REM sleep, for example. So you might then need less sleep overall to feel rejuvenated. So even if you're just lying in bed and you can take full control over your resting, if you can learn to sort of meditate and rest, he like gives you permission not to have to be asleep. And that I found that very liberating.
That was good. Yeah. Especially if, you do see some windows during the day as well and not feeling kind of guilty about it. Like, so I guess with the 90-minute cycles in mind, like there's times where, I guess like, because when I read this, I just had some annual leave and a week off. And just like I had an afternoon nap for like half an hour.
Yeah.
And then that made me feel more awake, have way more energy. But then also it meant that I wasn't tired till later, but I felt okay about it. I'm like, well, I'll just go to bed at like 10:30 now because I've had a rest during the day. So I guess it does give you some flexibility as well, if you're able to kind of able to see.
I don't quite remember, but yeah, he said you can use those windows for 90 minutes or half an hour naps. I don't quite get how the half an hour fits into his block system, but yeah, I've been using that a lot as well. So like when I'm feeling a bit sluggish in the middle of the day, just allowing myself just to close my eyes for half an hour and have a sort of meditation. And it's almost like I'm more likely to nod off if I don't tell myself I'm going for a nap, but I'm just resting my eyes. Because then there's no pressure to actually fall asleep. It's like, this is going to be beneficial even if I just allow myself to rest and then get up in half an hour later.
He talks about the pre and post sleep routines being 90 minutes as well. So, 90 minutes before bed, start thinking about, the amount of light exposure you're having, doing more, I suppose, winding down activities and preparing yourself for bed. And I guess we'll just start on that one before moving on to the morning. That's something I found really useful. Even starting this last year, trying as best as possible to turn off all technology, like an hour before I go to bed, and making sure like at least the final half an hour I'm reading or doing something relaxing. Maybe having a shower, like raising my body temperature a little bit, and then going into like a colder bedroom is something I found worked really, really well. I fall asleep a hell of a lot quicker when I've done that. I guess that there's a few of the things he says, but basically it's like no technology, don't eat too close to bed, like 90 minutes before bed.
So if your bedtime's 10:30, by 9, like all your lights should be off, all your screens should be off. You shouldn't be eating or drinking. It's like here's like ideally, wander around by candlelight. I find I can wander around in the dark. I don't know about you, but if you know your house all right, then
yeah, I suppose I've got I'll probably have like a dimmed light on. I wouldn't just read in the dark. I haven't got a Kindle yet. It's on its way. Was there anything else you about like the pre like sleep routine that you found useful?
I guess the main thing, just making sure your screens are off. Like I guess it's longer than you might think, right? So an hour and a half before you intend to be asleep feels quite a long time before you go to sleep, but kind of makes sense in terms of winding down. So I mean, the last few nights I've not been doing it well, but when I was first inspired straight after reading the book, yeah, it definitely was beneficial. So yeah, turning lights off. I've just got my like orange salt lamp, which I might have on a sort of dim glow, and hopefully not much blue lights coming out of that. And I guess turning off, like mentally turning off from, I don't know, maybe more stressful cognitive processes. So like maybe before, say your sleep time's 10:30, so before 9, you just want to make sure you've anything that might be on your mind, you just get right on a to-do list and be like, that's for tomorrow now. Like I'm not allowed to, I don't have to think about this anymore.
Yeah, that was nice. You touched on that kind of throughout the book as well, around, what, like giving yourself mental breaks, or, not carrying any mental baggage into your sleep. Like that's really those precious and protected time, and you want to make sure that you've resolved what needs to be resolved.
Yeah, he talked about tasks you could do in that hour and a half time, which are less, like maybe doing the laundry or like slowly washing up in some dim lighting, kind of like wind down things that don't take much effort, but kind of things chores you might need to get done anyway.
Slightly more mundane things. Yeah. And that's what he says as well. Just to jump back to circadian rhythms and things. He's basically saying, like, do the things that require a lot of energy in the morning, and then pick the more mundane tasks in the afternoon. That might be different if you're a PMer potentially.
Yeah.
So in regards to post-sleep routines, I think I've got mine down pretty good. Something as just around, I tend not to turn on any technology for at least an hour and a half after I've woken up. Try and get the lights on pretty early. I've got a dawn wake simulator in my room, so the room gets brighter half an hour, so I'm being woken up quite gently in the morning. I do eat breakfast as well. I'm trying to think what else he says. Exercise is good as well. Basically, I'm just not wanting to shock myself and rush out the door. So nice, gentle mornings. I know we've spoken before on this on the pod about morning routines and things like that, and I feel like mine's quite a gentle morning routine, and I give myself plenty of time. Like I wake up at 6, and then I'm not at work till 8.
And one of the standout things I got from the book is recognizing how, like, the importance of daylight and trying to like really get outside in that first hour and a half, because like even if you've got, I've got this window here, but like essentially a room is still a kind of cave, isn't it? And you don't want to still be in your cave an hour and a half after waking up. You want to get out of the house, and that's what your body expects, and that's what will wake you up. And so it's that balancing that with also not rushing and being stressed in the morning.
And that's something you can hopefully plan for. I suppose, I don't know, to me, gone are the days where I kind of wake up like half an hour before I've got to get to work, and just run into the shower, woken up by a really loud alarm, like leg it to work, and I'm just stressing. I'm like able to, I guess all the things I've said are things he recommends. Like with not having too much technology, not being too overly stimulated.
I was going to say, talk me through the technology one, because it seems like that's a different strategy from turning your technology off before you go to sleep, because the light doesn't matter so much first thing in the morning.
I think it's more around the mental stimulus it gives to you as well. Kind of having access to so much information, and then there's like a lot of messages overnight you might have gotten, or things you need to reply to, and kind of the world as it appears on a phone comes rushing in. And I suppose that's just not natural, is it? So like before you've even like seen daylight, or even like eaten any food, you're like wondering what someone's up to on Facebook, or like trying to reply to that message. I think the thing I've realized is that like if I woke up an hour later, the people I'm replying to wouldn't. It's not like I don't need to reply to anything at that point in time. It's not a.
So you've kind of got two ends of the spectrum. You've got like the waking up slowly to some light, whether that's like a dawn light simulator that you've got, or if you're sleeping outside, then waking up naturally with the sunrise, and then you're for an hour and a half you're slowly getting up, you're going outside, maybe go on a walk, doing a bit of exercise, having a light bit of food, and then maybe just sort of slowly thinking about what your days might have, maybe speaking to your loved ones or whoever you live with. And then there's that versus like your phone alarm goes off, you grab it, your curtains are still closed, you're looking at like the news, reading about natural disasters, COVID numbers, you're replying to texts, scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah.
Like you get up, you realize how late it is, you rush to the shower, hop out, rush out the door to go straight to work. You're feeling stressed about the emails you've just seen that you haven't replied to, getting to work on time.
Cortisol flying through your system.
Yeah, it's like he drops in a lot of like I remember he was talking about shift workers, so not just people who work night shifts, but people whose shifts change. So sometimes they work nights, sometimes they work days. And he was like, yeah, and these people are more likely to get type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, dementia. I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
So if you're doing this, you probably need to think a bit about your lifestyle and whether you can do this for a long amount of time, because you will. Yeah, I mean, I've said that as, like the times I've done a fair bit of like shift work and switching shifts. There's a big difference between kind of switching between doing a 7 to 3 and a 3 to 10 compared to doing like a night shift one night and then a day shift 2 days later where you're just getting totally thrown around. It's horrible. Like the times I've done that, I've done a day shift, gone home, napped for 2 hours, and then done a night shift, and it's just
that's awful.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I had this job where like you had to do night shifts, otherwise like you didn't get day shifts. They needed everyone to take their turn.
So then everyone gets screwed, really, because he's saying that for some people, like if you constantly work nights, you can kind of make it work. If you can personally fit that into your lifestyle, then like here's how to make that happen. But like basically, if you're changing from days to nights, then or like you're doing nights and then you're living by the day and the weekend and then going back to nights, is like, there's no. He's like, I basically have nothing for you. You're just going to die sooner if you do that.
Yeah, true stuff. Something, I mean, just to reiterate the point, like something I guess to anyone listening, like I'd really, really recommend just having like giving yourself plenty of time in the morning and picking the same wake up time as well. Like you'll find after a few weeks, you'll naturally wake up then anyway. Like I'll always wake up like a minute or two before my alarm. It's there must be something going on psychologically that if you're getting up the same exact time every day, your body gets used to it. And just knowing that's locked in and just having a nice morning structure. And I build in like a bit of a morning walk when I go into work as well. So just having like that bit of separation from home to work. And something he talks about as well is the transit period between home and work as well. Yeah. And I'm fortunate enough, or I've chosen to only ever live like tops like half an hour door to door from where I work. But for the most part, sometimes it's been 45. But I suppose just like what you do with that time as well is quite important, as in terms of a post sleep routine. Like how you make that nice for yourself.
Yeah. Does it kind of? I assume that would depend on what time you're coming home and that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in essence, I'm just saying like if your journey to work is like peaceful and it's not too far, you're not just kind of sat on the train as if you were in bed. Like it's a part of the day you can actually use to your advantage. Yeah, I think.
The idea of like having woken up 10 minutes ago and now being stood on a London tube, which is like packed, and you're like that. Yeah. I know it's reality for a lot of people. That just sounds horrible.
But I guess a way to counteract that would probably be not waking up so close to going back into a stressful environment. Yeah. That's what I've really found good at, like where I'm working at the moment, I suppose, is quite, I guess people would refer to that as quite intense. quite fast paced, like use a lot of brain energy, and having like a gentler start to the day, and also the going home from work as well is quite like a peaceful thing too. Not like adding any more kind of rush or stress to the day than needed.
I just generally, I like the general ethos of being more deliberate and taking more control over your life and well-being.
Yeah.
So like everything we talked about in terms of, you know, how many people are on the train or what your work environment's like, it's tempting to be like, I don't know, to kind of take responsibility off yourself and be like, well, I can't work around this. This is a stressful environment. But you can always choose what time you wake up, can't you? And plan your life around that so that you can have a longer morning and ease into the day a bit.
I think, I guess the point he said, like, not everyone can, like, choose the time they go to bed, like responsibilities, or choose their work, but in any way you can, basically just see what control you can take back of it. And also, I suppose, requiring a bit of discipline to get a routine going, like trying something out for like a month, just see how it goes, like waking up at the same time, or turning off your phone 2 hours before bed, or whatever it is you need to do. I suppose a lot of the things we've spoken about, are things just worth trying, like try sleeping in 90-minute cycles, see if you can take a nap during the day, try a new post and pre-sleep routine, try, getting a dawn wake alarm to wake you up naturally, like see what difference it makes, because it's such a personal thing, isn't it? Like I think I suppose that's where I just have a couple of niggles about the not strict with the 90 minutes, but in terms of like you'll get to know what works for you, and how good it is when you feel you've had a good night's sleep, or you're just not walking into work tired. Like this is about you performing your best. Rest is such an important part of recovery.
You're right over time, but you can also, like, the trap I've fallen into is like, you're trying to establish that wake up time. And to be honest, maybe I've set mine too early, and that's why I'm struggling with it. Because he's like, it doesn't matter when it is. For some people, it might be like 10:30. That might be their alarm time, but just make it the same every morning, But yeah, I've been like waking up so tired at that time and just sort of forcing myself through it, and then feeling like a bit like I'm not so effective at work and a bit more stressed because I'm tired. And maybe I haven't seen it through, or I should set that time a bit later, or probably my key area I'm not getting is, which I should focus on, is the evening routine, because it's easy to think the morning's the problem when that's when you feel the effects of it. But obviously if I was getting to sleep easier because lights were off sooner, and I'm probably eating too late and drinking too late and waking up to go for a wee and all that sort of thing. So can't remember what I was saying now.
Yeah, I guess also thinking about like sugar and caffeine as well. We talked about that. Something I've tried to do is like really, because I don't drink coffee anymore, but I have tea, which obviously, but I try and delay when I have that as much as possible. Like don't have it until like I get like an hour into work or something like that, or half an hour into work, rather than having it like the moment I wake up, trying as much as possible to do things that naturally wake me up, whether that's morning exercise, getting in sunlight, cold showers.
He talked about it having, I can't remember the length, was it like a 6-hour half-life, caffeine? So it's like you probably shouldn't be consuming any 6 hours before you intend to go to sleep, at least.
Yeah.
And that there was a certain amount, I forget what it was, 400 something, maybe milliliters, I can't remember. But like, a certain amount is like, just never go over this threshold. So it's
400 milligrams, isn't it, a day? That's the daily recommended amount.
Right.
Yeah, some people kind of, I guess, like I feel sad, maybe, I don't know if that's the word, but when I meet people who are like, oh, I don't feel alive unless I've had 4 shots of coffee in the morning, I'm like, that doesn't sound healthy. That's not cool, I don't think. It's,
there is something a bit braggy about it, isn't it? It's funny.
Yeah, so I need my 4 shots. It's like, you don't need it, you just made yourself need it. Oh, that's it. Each to their own. I mean, there's also what was I going to say? Yeah, like I realize like when I have sugar too late to bed as well, that's just like I just cannot sleep whatsoever. Alcohol close to bed, like sugary alcoholic drinks.
Oh man,
I realize like anything too close to bed, I reckon fucks me up.
When you pile all this up, you really realize how like our culture is just almost completely against what's good for you in terms of sleep, right? Because it would be completely normal to be having coffees in the afternoon, a few drinks before bed, like be eating fairly soon before bed, like having scrolling on your phone being the last thing you do before you fall asleep, or watching a screen on Netflix or something in bed before you go to sleep, like having a very loud alarm that wakes you up in the morning and then you rush off to work. It's like that would all be very normal.
It's not very respected, is it? Sleep.
No,
it's not seen as like an important part of life and our recovery. And I think this book just encourages people. It's encouraged me just to kind of really look at like what works for me, like whether you take absolutely everything from this book or not. Like what can you do to improve your recovery? That's what it is. And how can you perform better the next day? And what things can you take, or what things can you add to your sleep routine to make it to improve it? Because I know once I've got my sleep down, like the basics, like exercise, sleep, and my food right. Yeah, I've just naturally just got so much more energy, and I know I'm performing better. But it's so often it can slip without really noticing it. I think it's something that probably would creep up over time. Like people who just like chronically bad sleep hygiene. Yeah, and they wonder why they're tired all the time, or they have a breakdown, or it can lead to other stresses later in life.
Well, he doesn't go into this, but there's a certain cycle you can get into because they reckon REM sleep is mainly used to process like unresolved emotional events throughout the day. Yeah. So the more like stress and anxiety and depression you have throughout the day, the more REM sleep you're going to need. But REM sleep takes up loads of energy. So like it actually drains you more than being awake does. So then if you're stressed throughout the day for not getting enough sleep, and then you're going to need more REM sleep when you do go to sleep, which means you're getting less deep sleep, so actual less recovery. So some people claim, well, I was asleep for like 9 hours and I just feel like I haven't slept a wink. It's probably because you've been in REM for like most of your cycles.
Absolutely ages, yeah.
It's really hard to get out of that without just stopping life for a while, just quitting everything and like setting yourself right. Yeah.
I think, I do think sometimes, in my opinion anyway, there is some utility in just like not setting an alarm. Sometimes, like if you can feel though it's been a long period of time that your body just needs to rest. Like, I know I came back from traveling once and I slept for like, I think it was, honest, I'm not joking, I think it was 17 hours. It was like ridiculous. I went to bed I obviously had to try and work out the maths. I think about like 8 at night and woke up like in the afternoon the following day, like quite late. Yeah. It was ridiculous. I know a time we've come back from a trip and I've slept like 15 hours and just once in a while your body is just like fucking shut off. It just needs to go. Yeah. So I think that's probably something a bit different to what he's talking about.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
I guess just to wrap up on a final point, I was interested to know any key areas of interest or introspection.
Oh, okay, well here's what he talked about your actual bed, which
I was going to say the sleep environment. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And one thing that I've always felt like I shouldn't feel this way, but I do, it's just like I hate sharing a bed. It's like just to sleep in, it's like I wake up 3 times as much. It feels like I'm on a slant sometimes. It's like I've never, with it doesn't matter who the partner is, it's just like I've never been able to get used to that. And he was like, I love the permission he gives. Is like, a double bed is not a double bed. A double bed is not intended for 2 people. Like the absolute like minimum size you need for 2 people is a super king size. And like anything smaller is for a single person. I'm like, yes, I can relate to that a lot. Yeah.
And he talks about like like the bed frame means absolutely nothing, and
the actual bed is just a decorative item. It's all about the sleeping surface. Yeah.
I think a couple of things I liked about the sleep environment that I've made some changes since is like keeping your bedroom like very simplistic.
Oh yeah.
That's something I've done a lot. I've moved my desk downstairs. I had like a lot of my technology up here, but now it's literally like a bed, a kind of minimal bookshelf, and just like a side table with a lamp on it.
Yeah.
And I found that's made such a difference, just having like a really simple, basic room that's meant for resting and meant for sleeping.
Yeah.
And then everything else kind of happens in other areas. Like obviously, like not everyone is able to do that, and to a degree, like I have to have quite a lot of things in here that if I had a choice, I'd move them out. But I've really enjoyed doing that. And I guess just to add to that, I bought some pretty fancy lights that like dim and do the wake light simulator thing as well. Yeah. So like my housemate recommended them. I honestly think they're one of the best things I've bought. Just being able to, dim my lights in the evening when I'm maybe reading in bed for the final half an hour, or just like in the morning getting on some really bright daylight as well. There's all these different settings, like something quite steely and that just like really wakes me up and is kind of a bit of a shock. So that's something maybe I'd recommend to people, like really simplifying your room and thinking about lighting and how much clutter's in the room as well.
Well, it's another one that the culture, the more modern culture is going against, right? Because people generally, there's a big culture of you go to uni where you kind of might live in a dorm bedroom, which is also the space where you live. And then that kind of turns into shared housing for a lot of people for many years throughout their 20s, where it's like, 4 people aren't going to all be having office spaces outside of their rooms if it's all, if they're all young professionals sharing the same space. So we live in a culture which is also quite difficult for a lot of people to make their bedroom just a space for sleeping, as he kind of suggests it should be. He even suggests not having your wardrobe in there. Like you should get changed elsewhere.
I think, or even just like covering up things, so you're not looking at like stimulating. You're not looking at your like list on the wall before you go to bed, or like he says even like your list of DVD collections. If you're looking at the titles and they're all a bit like horror movie films. Titles. It's I mean, I guess he worked with the British cycling team when they were doing the 1% improvements, which James Clear chats about. Atomic Habits. So he's really focused on making lots of minute changes. So I suppose with that in mind, things like that, you could take or leave, but it's worth thinking about. Like, what do you, when you're in bed about to go to sleep, like what are you looking at? Are you just looking at like pictures on the wall and things that are like going to stimulate you mentally or stress you out or make you worried or sad, or you looking at your bookshelf with all the books you want to read, like what's going into your brain immediately before you go to bed.
And I guess
found simplifying's been good.
You can paint the idea, like he can paint an ideal, and then you can kind of work back from that with what's realistic. If most people are checking their phones before bed, then like that's an easy one that anyone can, well, not maybe psychologically easy, but practically easy to just don't do that an hour and a half before bed. Whereas things like, or just making sure your room's like clean and tidy before you go to sleep,
Yes, that was something.
So you just don't have crap lying all over the floor, which can sort of feel a bit stressful, even if you don't really notice.
That's it. Or like, clean, having nice clean sheets, weekly, or just really taking it seriously in any way you can and making adjustments, I suppose. Just making it as peaceful an environment. It talks about, have minimal light, minimal noise, anything that's going to kind of wake you up. And if there's a partner in the bed as well, like they're at risk of touching your leg and waking you up. Just try and find ways to.
He basically said ideally you shouldn't share a bed with someone. Like have a space you share for like sex, and then just go your separate rooms to sleep in. Talked about Roger Federer having his own like house. Like he would like go to his wife's bedroom for like a cuddle, and then like go to the house next door to sleep in.
To sleep, So. Oh well, I found it.
Go on.
Yeah,
Just one thing we've missed is the sleeping position, where he's quite rigid on that as well, right? Is like you should lie in the fetal position on your non-dominant side, and that's how you should sleep.
Yeah, because it's I think he talks about naturally, like we're protecting our organs when we have our dominant hand on the outside to protect us,
like around your belly and your chest, and you're kind of turned inwards. Whereas if you're lying on your back, all your like organs and genitals are just exposed, and it apparently feels more threatened, even if you're not consciously aware of that.
Yeah, and especially you talked about breathing as well. Like you're more likely to snore if you're on your back, and on your front's just horrific for your neck. But also, that bit you talk about security as well. Minor things like, is your room door locked always, or is your front door? Do you need to go and like check the front door's locked before you go to bed? Do you need to shut any windows? Do you install security cameras outside your house just to make sure that it's like a sanctuary that you're not?
Just so you feel psychologically safe.
Yeah, and I think that's something really worth thinking about as well. Even the use of like talking to people before you go to bed to maybe get certain things off your chest, or like the use of meditation as well as a mindfulness exercise, or even as relaxation technique as well. Like, what can you do to make yourself feel psychologically peaceful, I suppose, and safe before you go to bed? Yeah.
Another one he said, which I was like, nah, like this is getting a bit far, is like, ideally you wouldn't have a pillow. Like, it's like,
come on, Nicholas.
Like your mattress should be so perfected to shape your body such that, like, from your toe up your spine to your neck, whilst in the fetal position is a straight line, that a pillow is a addition to an imperfect environment. So ideally, with the perfect environment, you wouldn't need one.
Yeah, it's almost like you refuse to speak about pillows.
We seem to have lost Will. Well, I think we pretty much got to the end. Oh, he's back. Hello, mate. You froze a bit there.
Yeah. Oh, did I? All right. Yeah. Well,
I was carrying it out on my own.
Oh, there we go. Anyway, that's probably a sign for us to wrap up then.
Yeah, why not? Oh, he's frozen again. Well, thanks, mate. Enjoyed that. I'm certainly inspired to get my routine back on track again. And see you next week. And we will be covering Tony Robbins's The Time of Your Life audio program. It's not even a book this time.
We're branching out. I think there is an
accompanying manual and like cards. So it's like an audio program that you would follow through and follow through the workbook. So Will and I have both given that a crack. We'll be talking about that next time. I'll give him a few seconds to say goodbye. If not, leave it there. Take care, mate.